Welcome back to Close Up. Education remains a hot-button issue, and there are several debates ongoing in Concord and cases in the courts to prove that. Here this morning to discuss as many issues as we can possibly ask him about in about 10 minutes is New Hampshire's Commissioner of Education, Frank Edelblut. Commissioner, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Adam. I'm happy to be here.
So, interesting to note, if you were a student who was a high school freshman when the pandemic hit, you're now a senior eyeing graduation in the spring. I'm interested to know, from your perspective, how much learning loss, how much of an impact have those students seen in that high school experience?
So we do know that learning loss took place. Just the disruptive effect of COVID. In New Hampshire, our schools were not closed that much, but they were disrupted because students had to quarantine because they got COVID, their sibling got COVID, something like that. So certainly the learning was disrupted. The assessment results tell us that it was disrupted because we saw a decline from 2019 to the 2022 results on the NAEP results. But one of the encouraging things that you don't hear about is when NAEP looks at the results, they look at two data points between 2019 and 2022, and they see a decline. But here at the state, we've got a statewide assessment, and so we've got 2019, we've got 2021, and 2022. And we did see a recovery from 21 to 22, which is encouraging. Now, that was not a recovery all the way back to our normal place, but we do think that we're going to administer that assessment again in 23. We'll see how those students are doing, and we'll continue to try and, work to get them on a pathway and a trajectory to recovery. I mean, part of doing that is providing tools for our teachers and for our school systems. Two of my favorite that we've rolled out recently, one is the tutor.com platform. So every student here in New Hampshire has access to 24/7 tutoring by a tutor across any subject that they might have. So, if they get home and they get stuck on something, they don't have to get stuck. This is a tool for teachers to use in the classroom. If they're working with students, a student's struggling with something, they can say, hey, why don't you do a tutoring session with tutor.com, get some refresher on this, and then you can work on it. So we're doing a lot of different things to try and move the system forward for those kids. But it is tough to be, if you were a sophomore and you missed those 2 years.
Yeah. Another option is the education freedom accounts. Now, just curious for a global update on that right now, what the numbers look like, and are we seeing any of the loss of funding that the critics said we would see on the local level?
Yeah, so basically we have about a little over 3,000 students who are engaged in that program, and as people really know, the education freedom accounts are about providing opportunities to families. And really, when you look at the landscape across the country, states across the country are adopting these education freedom accounts because what they realize, and what we've known in education for decades, is that the system doesn't work for all children, right? Different learners need different circumstances in order to be successful. And that's really what we want to basically see. And so the Education Freedom Account is a tool for state and education leaders to be able to allow students to find a pathway to success. Relative to the funding, the school districts are receiving a record amount of funding right now. And they, even with the Education Freedom Accounts, the schools have always received exactly the amount of funding that they are due. So this idea that somehow if you fund one thing, you don't fund another, it doesn't really make any sense. It's kind of like, well, we fill potholes. Should that money go to the schools as well? Really, the schools are funded based on the formula that the legislature has given us, and education freedom accounts provide an opportunity for students to be able to find success.
The population of students that's accessing this, at the State House, the debate was always about that kid who wants to move from the public to the private. But how much of the percentage are these kids who are already in private school who are just accessing the funds that are available to them now? Yeah,
so we did see a percentage when we first adopted the program. You had families that were already finding a way to send their kid to a non-public school who took advantage of it. What we have to keep in mind is these are families who are at 300% or below of the federal poverty level. So you can imagine the stress on those households. And they said, look, it's important to us. We want to make good choices for education for our children. And so they were making sacrifices as those families, and yet they're still paying taxes here in the state. And so really what we're doing is we're providing an opportunity for those students to sustain those abilities to find an educational pathway that will be successful and bring them to a bright future.
There's a push in the legislature for more oversight. Do you agree with that? Do the EFAs need another set of eyes on them?
Yeah, so there are quite a number of sets of eyes on these, at the department level, through the scholarship organization. We've got a legislative oversight committee. So there are many people watching what's going on in there. I myself was on phone calls this week reviewing individual line item expenses to make sure that we're tracking and monitoring the types of costs that are coming through there to make sure that they are eligible. And we don't see any of the problems that have ever occurred in another state. We've got a nice, clean program. Again, Ed, my background is as an accountant, designing systems of internal control. And so we've got good internal controls over this program to make sure that the taxpayers' money is protected and it's going to what we want, which is supporting students in their education.
Commissioner, we're more than a year now into the regime of the anti-discrimination law. Some call it divisive concepts. In the law, it's anti-discrimination. There's been a lot of discussion about this and how it works. And I know that some teachers have already faced complaints, but there's nothing that's reached the level of a full-blown, you're on trial kind of investigation here. Why is that? Why has nothing that's come to you so far reached that point of moving forward with a prosecution, if you will, of the law?
Yeah, well, so just to be clear, so nothing actually comes to the Department of Education, right? If there is discrimination in our schools, and nobody wants discrimination in our schools or in our society, in any of our community settings. If there is a complaint, and I'm not aware of any complaints, those go to the Human Rights Commission. They don't come to the Department of Education. And so the fact that we've, again, if you're saying, I'll take this as a case, I don't know the answer to this. If there are not cases, then that means that our teachers are following the law. They're just teaching the content that the school boards and the state have authorized, and they're focused on that, and that's really what we want to have. I mean, a good education is focusing on the curriculum and delivering that for the students.
Have you yourself reached out to any of the teachers who've been investigated?
So I don't, when you say you've been investigated, we don't have any
who've received a complaint. Have you
so those complaints don't come to the department. So
but have you communicated with any of those teachers who faced a complaint?
I don't know who's faced a complaint, so I wouldn't be able to reach out to them.
Okay.
But I have no knowledge of, like, if there's a complaint goes to the Human Rights Commission.
Right, but don't you want to know, I guess, is what my question.
Well, whether I want to know or not is kind of an irrelevant fact. I don't know, and I'm not privy to that information because those items go to the Human Rights Commission.
So unequivocally, you haven't spoken to any teachers who faced any kind of complaint?
Correct.
Okay.
If there is a complaint.
Many teachers feel like this has created a kind of climate of fear around what they're doing. Do you feel a responsibility at all to try to disperse that or try to stabilize the environment for them in any way?
I do think it's important that we communicate to our teachers that they're being supported, and part of supporting them is recognizing that that they have a job to do, which is to deliver that curriculum in the classroom as best they can, and we want to make sure that that happens. But we also have to recognize that our educators are employees of the government, of the school district, and they're there to do the work that the school boards and the state have authorized them to do, and to not do something beyond that. And so really, that's what we want to encourage them and give them tools to be able to do. And in that process, we want to make sure that neither our teachers nor our students are discriminated against in any possible way.
There's been a lot of discussion lately of the kind of books that kids have access to, whether it's in the library or on the tablet or things like that, particularly focused on things that might be of a sexually explicit nature or have some sort of quasi-instructional aspect to them about certain sexual acts. Have you found any instances of these materials or books being used anywhere in the schools, and particularly at an age-inappropriate level?
Yes, so that's really what we're focused on, that last piece that you have pointed out. We have received a variety of complaints into the department relative to some of the content in the schools. When that happens, we're working with the school districts, we're working with the families, because everybody, whether you're a teacher or whether you're a family, a parent, you want to make sure that the content of the instructional materials is developmentally appropriate. When students are, when they're confronted with developmentally inappropriate materials, it causes harm, right? It causes stress, it causes anxiety, and it runs the risk of causing trauma that will impact those students. And so nobody wants to put developmentally inappropriate materials into the hands of students.
Are the complaints legit, though? Have you found these instances in New Hampshire schools?
So those are the things that we're working through right now to make sure that we're not putting developmentally inappropriate material in front of our children.
All right. Back in the day...
I think that teachers don't want to put developmentally inappropriate material in front of children, and they want to make sure that they're protecting children as well.
Something that we may have found developmentally appropriate in our day was having to go through and write cursive
Yes.
time and again. There are some lawmakers who want to bring this back and mandate mandate the use of cursive. I'm interested in your perspective. People think it's old school, but it may have some benefits. What are your thoughts on that?
It is old school, and it's kind of fun to watch the tension that develops there. We were having a conversation in the agency, and even among our agency, there are different opinions about whether cursive is a good thing or cursive is not a good thing. I happen to be a fan of cursive. I do know that the research shows that it provides benefits to the students in the form of some neurological development. It builds neural pathways for those students. It is useful for students to have learning disabilities to help them in terms of their focus, their concentration, their ability to create connections among words and letters. And so we'll see how that plays out, but I'm a fan of cursive writing.
All right. Well, we had to do it. Maybe they have to do it too, gosh darn it. All right.
Well, I mean, it's a good thing for them, right?
Commissioner, thanks for joining us on Close Up. We appreciate the time.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much, Adam.